So when you think about the electric vehicle revolution, where does your mind go? Probably California, right? Maybe Norway, or even Shanghai. But what if I told you one of the most incredible EV takeovers on the planet is happening somewhere you'd least expect? We're going to dive into the surprising story of how South America is going electric and who exactly is plugging it in. To really understand just how fast things have changed, we have to rewind the clock just a few years. There's this one story that perfectly captures the wild, almost frontier-like spirit of the first EV owners in the region. You have to hear this. Back in 2019, an entrepreneur in Peru named Luis Zuibach really wanted a Tesla. But just to test drive one, he had to fly 4,000 miles to California. Getting it back home was a total nightmare of paperwork. And then, when he finally tried to charge it at a friend's beach house, nothing. It wouldn't charge. So what did they do? They improvised with a kitchen fork. They literally stuck a fork in the ground to get the car to charge. That's how basic things were. And that wasn't just a one-off crazy story. For pioneers like him, getting an EV from a brand like Tesla, which had zero showrooms, no official importers, was this massive personal quest. It was expensive, it was complicated, and it was absolutely not for your average car buyer. But that was then. Today, the entire landscape has been completely redrawn. A whole new set of players have shown up, and they didn't just knock on the door. They basically blew it off its hinges. So while Tesla is still mostly a no-show in the showrooms, the streets in South America are filling up fast with electric cars from Chinese brands. We're talking BYD, Geely, and GWM. And their secret weapon? Its price. They're selling these EVs for about 60% of what a Tesla would cost, which just opens the door for a ton more people. So what's the impact of that? Well, just look at Peru. Sales of hybrid and electric vehicles jumped a staggering 44% year on year. This isn't some slow trickle, you guys. This is a tidal wave. People were ready, and now the affordable cars are finally here. And it's not just happening in Peru. All across the continent, Chinese brands are grabbing huge pieces of the entire car market, not just electrics. Take Chile, for example. They've already captured nearly 30% of all new car sales. It just goes to show they're competing head-to-head with the big traditional brands on quality and scale. Okay, now let's drill down specifically on EV adoption. These numbers, they're record highs. In Uruguay, an incredible 28% of new cars sold in one quarter were electric. And in huge markets like Chile and Brazil, that share is hitting double digits and climbing fast. This is the direct result of that flood of affordable Chinese models. So the big question is, how did this happen so incredibly quickly? Well, it wasn't an accident. It's actually the result of a really deliberate and, frankly, brilliant three-part strategy. Let's break it down. Okay, so first, as we've seen, aggressive pricing. They made EVs something people could actually afford. Second, they didn't try to do it all themselves. They were smart. They partnered up with trusted local car dealers and banks, which gave them instant credibility and made financing easy. And third, they delivered. They brought good quality cars and they brought them at scale, meeting what consumers expect these days. This quote from a car dealer in Uruguay just says it all, doesn't it? The value proposition is just too huge to ignore. I mean, when you can buy 3 trucks for the price of 2, you're not just competing anymore, you are completely changing the math for buyers. So why South America? Why here? Well, while Chinese car companies are running into high tariffs and all sorts of trade restrictions in the US and Europe, they found a much friendlier environment down south. You've got open markets, some government incentives, and a massive surplus of cars back in their factories. It was just the perfect storm. But look, selling the cars is only half the story. You have to actually get them there efficiently. And this is where a gigantic infrastructure project enters the picture. And it's acting like a supercharger for this whole operation. Meet the port of Chiang. This is not just any old port. This is a Chinese-built megaport. It's a key part of their massive global Belt and Road Initiative. And it was designed from the ground up to be the main gateway for Chinese goods into the continent. And the first major impact of this port is just mind-boggling. It cuts the shipping time across the Pacific by 50%. What used to take over a month now takes about 2 weeks. This isn't just about saving time. It slashes costs and makes these already cheap cars even more competitive. And the sheer scale of this is hard to wrap your head around. Each one of these massive ships pulling into Shanghai can carry up to 1,200 vehicles at a time. This changes everything. It turns the import business from a small stream into a massive pipeline just ready to flood the market.
And believe me, those ships are coming. The port operator expects a total of 19,000 vehicles to arrive from China by the end of this year alone. That's like 15 or 16 of those giant ships, and we're told that's really just the beginning.
And here's the really key thing to understand. Chancay isn't just about Peru. The cars that arrive at this port are immediately being put on other ships and sent to Chile, Ecuador, and Colombia. Peru has basically become the central distribution hub for China's entire automotive game plan for the continent. This whole takeover is happening so fast that the strategy is already evolving. The game is shifting now from just importing cars to actually building them right there on South American soil. And Brazil is really the main battleground for this next phase. Chinese giants like BYD and GWM are already moving in, taking over old Ford and Mercedes-Benz factories to start building cars locally. And they're moving fast for a reason. Brazil is bringing back import tariffs, and by 2026, they'll hit 35%. So by building cars inside Brazil, they get around those tariffs and can then export duty-free to all the neighboring countries in that Mercosur trade bloc. It's a really slick move. Of course, it's not all smooth sailing from here. There are still some pretty big hurdles to get over for mass EV adoption. I mean, the continent is huge, so you have these massive travel distances, the charging infrastructure is still really patchy, and, not surprisingly, this flood of cheap imports is starting to create some trade tensions, especially in places like Brazil that have their own auto industry to protect. Which kind of leaves us with this one big, fascinating question to think about. When you step back and look at the whole picture, the affordable cars flooding in, the massive port controlling the logistics, the new factories being built on local soil, you have to wonder, is this really just about selling cars? Or are we watching the construction of a brand new economic superhighway, one that's fundamentally reshaping trade and maybe influence across an entire continent?